the first song, he's like, I'm happy. That's the saddest lie. And it's like, fuck. Like, for people who don't know him, they're like, oh, this dude's a bummer. But it wasn't, that wasn't the majority of the reaction wasn't like that. I mean, again, you still have those fans that just listen to day and night, and they're like, oh yeah, he's just for potheads or whatever. But then the other people who really listen to his album were like, no, he actually makes pretty good music. So at the time, when he first dropped his debut, he was a hit. He was a hit for sure. I just don't think people were like, oh, this guy's the future. They were just more like, oh, this guy's different. I like him. He's new. That kind of thing.
Well, I like that you bring up that point of him being a bummer, because you know what song really changed it for him with that was the last track on Man on the Moon 1. Now, when the sun come up, I'll be there to say what up in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's a great song.
Up and away. That's what it was called. That song, like, it kind of left the album on like more of like a cheerful, hopeful note. And there's always been some hopefulness to his music, even with how dark it's been. It's Gonna Be Okay on Man on the Moon 2 there.
Ghost, like that. He always sort of ends it like that, with that sort of like, it's a little dark, but it's gonna be all right at the end. Yeah, that's true.
Speeding Bullet to Heaven, even his darkest album, had that I'm All Smiles.
Yeah, I love that song. That's probably my favorite song on the whole album. That's definitely my favorite song, actually.
Yeah, that was the title track, Speeding Bullet to Heaven. So I'll say, like, also to your point on the first album and the popularity of it at the time, I think Man on the Moon 3, what it does more than anything that alludes to those first two albums, which it doesn't do too much. It's a very different album than those first two. It's more like it in name than anything else. It does have that production style to it. Even if it's deep, even if it's subtle, like, you have those synths moving in a way that kind of puts you in outer space. You have like that on the first track there.
You're going on a journey.
Yeah, like, that's what's still there. And it's the same people. Emil playing Pat, Dr. Genius, and Mike Dean. They're all there. They're all running the ship here. It's not much on Kid Cudi production wise, and they crafted that sound. I think what I pull from those first two albums still more than anything, through tracks that you didn't love as much, is that the production put you somewhere and made you feel something, and it was unique above anything else. Like, no one, even after all these years, people have kind of descended off Kid Cudi, but no one has captured the sound quite the same way that he does continue to do.
Right, especially when he's on features. Like, when he hops on other people's songs, I feel like people who aren't too crazy about him are like, oh, that was a nice touch to the song. He adds that flair. And then it's like, listen to his music, and it's like, that's what it is all the time. But I think, the diehard Cudi fans, it's like too over the top. I almost feel like they sell it too much. It's like people are like, oh, okay. And then they go into it with like expectations through the roof, I feel like. And as years has gone on, people kind of just like, oh, all right, yeah, this guy's still sort of a thing. But it's just like, I like his songs here and there, but they don't really give the new stuff more of a chance. Whereas the hip hop community, I feel like, is more accepting, as opposed to like someone who's like, yeah, I kind of like this dude. I like Pursuit of Happiness and all that stuff, but like, I'm not too crazy about it. But this album, he's got something for everyone. Like, I feel like you can go into this album and you can pick out a few tracks that you generally like because of the sound and because of the messages, which I think are still ring true today, obviously. And you see him come full circle on where he's been throughout the last 10 years.
So if I'm running through this track list, the songs that stand out, and there's a lot of tracks on here, 18. You mentioned this yesterday when we tried to do this episode, that there's a lot of songs on here, and we're still not at the point where I can pick out every one of these looking at the titles. But the ones that stick out to me, probably Elsie's Baby Boy. Not my favorite track on there, but that was more that Wizard Speeding Bullet to Heaven kind of track.
The ending though, those last 40 seconds, that definitely has that vibe, and especially like right in the middle of the album where you're like, man, this journey's been crazy so far. Like, where are we going next? I'm down. Let's do it. Like, I definitely got that vibe for sure. Yeah.
Loving Me, such a great moment with Phoebe Bridgers, who I didn't know about coming into this album. I listened to her music, and I seen her on the top, 50 list that everybody's dropping right now, and everyone's got her in like the top 5, 10. Her album that came out earlier in the year, and I listened to it, and it's reflective of Cudi in a way. Like, it definitely has that vibe to it, a different genre, but someone who meshes well with him. And I thought I'd create a nice alternative track there. Tequila Shots, the opener.
That's your favorite. I know that.
That set a mood like no other. And the writing on there, especially. I thought the writing on the album overall was really good. Putting himself in this dark place, going down this awful road, which Tequila has been part of many times, as he's mentioned. And the line that stuck out to me most there, and he's had kind of these harrowing lines throughout the years that really just kind of send chills down you, is tell my mom I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's really telling, but I think it also shows that he's in a space now where he knows where those dark roads lead, and he knows that he's in a better place. And I think
Isn't that so obvious? Like, you watch the interviews, like he's just in such a good place right now.
You just get that vibe, and you just know that he's progressing. And you look at where he was 4 years ago when he put up that message and he was going to check into rehab for depression. It's like, man, you knew that he was in that rough space because of the album that he dropped. And then when he comes out, Speeding Bullet comes out, and you're like, oh, okay, or no, excuse me, I always get these two confused. Demon Slaying comes out, and you're like, all right, he's getting back in there. He's sort of rapping, but then, man, when Kids See Ghosts came out, and you just knew he was in that space where he could really create some bars, some hip hop that obviously has always been part of the Cudi sound, but in the last 5 years, he sort of had one foot in, one foot out, and sort of always been exploring. And that's who he is. And I accept that. I love that about Cudi, but there's just something about the music he's been putting out just now, and you couple it with Kids See Ghosts, two completely different albums, right, Bobby? But two great bodies of work, of music, great albums that really exemplify who Cudi is, who he was and who he is now, like sort of that transition to who he's evolved into, who we see today.
Yeah. And if there's one criticism I guess you can take from that when we look at this album compared to Kids See Ghosts, Kids See Ghosts is a better album. I think you probably agree with that too. Like, that was just a phenomenal piece, and almost everybody agreed that was one of the 5-10 best albums of 2018 because it's so condensed. It's 7 tracks, 24 minutes, the best of the best. There's no extra fat here. Right. Everything. Yep. You just straight to the point. And that's the Kanye influence. That's him overseeing it, executive producing it. I guess if you can criticize Cudi over the years, him as an executive producer, almost like a writer, being unwilling to cut off those extra paragraphs, being able to condense his work, and just like that's my knock on Cudi, that Passion Pain and Demon Slaying album was 88 minutes.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's a whole movie, which is okay. Yet, that's always sort of the thing with Cudi. You're sort of going into another movie or another chapter of his life, but like, it was really redundant at some parts of that. Oh no, I forget. We talked about this the other time we tried to record, but it was some of those songs I felt like were redundant, and I love that sound, and I was hyped for the album, but I was like, man, this one, another 18 tracks. Like, how long are these songs? But no, complete opposite. What, 3 minutes tops for most of these songs?
It's 58-minute album. Yep.
Compared to when he used to say, 420 at the end of the song because of the 420-minute mark of the song, or he'd be well over 5 minutes. And it's just like instrumentals for like 2.5 minutes to finish the song. You're like, all right, Cudi, wrap this one up. Like, yeah.
And Speeding Bullet to Heaven too, an album I liked more than most people. I thought it was a risky, bold attempt at doing something he really loved and was obviously inspired by, but the songs weren't justifying 5 minutes, 6 minutes, just drowning on and on forever. And the skits on there too.
He made it a double disc.
Yeah. Like, I got it right here.
You had the physical copy?
Yeah. 2 discs.
Man, that was I remember telling people, I'm like, yo, not only is this like, at the time, it's still today, if you ask me, I think this is his worst album, but it's like he made it he had the nerve to put 20 plus tracks worth of this. Whereas, he could have easily made that. Wait, hold on. Wait. No, that's the latest one? Or are you talking about?
Speeding Bullet to Heaven, yeah.
Oh, that's what the inside looks like? Oh, that's pretty cool, actually. Oh, all right. No, I've never even seen the inside. So, but here's my thing with the album, though. Here's my thing. After going through it a bunch of times, because no matter what, it's a Kid Cudi album, I got to go through it. And as time goes on, you figure out what you like. And I remember I had a playlist down to about 9 songs of the best songs from both discs. And I listened to that a lot of, repetitive throughout the summer that year. And it wasn't too bad. Some of those songs grew on me, but again, it was just way too much. Like, he had to trim the fat on that one.
like it's on there, and some making like a punk rock album, which I thought was admirable. Like he takes risk in ways that other artists who lean on one sound, who lean on just kind of like a crutch almost, aren't willing to do.
Right.
And when you take risks, sometimes it's going to blow up in your face. And that one obviously did. And he tweeted a couple years ago, I think it was 2018. Someone was talking about it on Twitter. And, he kind of came out and said like it wasn't the most beloved album I've ever released, but I'm still proud of it and what I was able to do. And he said at that time in his life, he was struggling so much that he just kind of had to come out and scream over some instrumentals that he was playing. And
Right.
that's the vibe.
And that was the biggest takeaway from it. It was like, not only is this album not great, but like Cudi's not okay. Like this is the bottom of the, we've seen him sort of spiral a bit, Legend of Mr. Rager, he was living that life. And it was like, man, this is getting worse now. And it was like,
remember the first track on that album? It was like dreary, even for him.
Right. What are you talking about? Man on the Moon 2 or you talking about
on Speeding Boat to Heaven? Edge of the Earth, Postmortem
like,
Boredom. Yeah.
Where are we going here? And then obviously he talks about the topic of suicide, but it was just the way he was talking about that. The way you don't sing about it like this though. This is sort of like you're making it sound like it's inevitable at this point. I mean, that's what made it even scarier. It's like the music wasn't great, it wasn't his best body of work, and he just wasn't in a great place. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the lyrics to that album. Hanging on the edge of the earth. What a beautiful scene. What a beautiful ending to see.
Right.
Laying on a cliff,
like
staring at the stars. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I was into it because I'm like, all right, because the beat and everything, and then the intro, like the first couple of songs aren't that bad, and then it spirals, man.
I like that intro track. Like that was
a good song.
If that album had one thing, it was the bareness, the vulnerability of it. Like cover your wounds, don't show your scars, smile from friends, and carry on. Here's one more for the people lost in the sanity. Like
that's a good song.
The writing was good on there, but it was inconsistent though, and it dragged on too long, and it was full of itself. But the cover art was cool. One of his better cover arts, I'd say. Yeah. So we get past that. Like you said, Passion, Pain, Demon Slaying, nice comeback, but it drags on for too long itself. Great tracks like the Andre 3000 one on the front end.
He was getting back in the right direction. Like, okay, he's starting to sway towards obviously a little more back to hip hop, less guitar, more bass. But also, I love the melodies in that album. And I was like,
it was so danceable. Remember Surfing?
Yeah. Surfing, I love Surfing. That was like a party track for me. I remember they used to play at the Garden a lot.
Yeah.
Celtics, I don't know who loved that song, but it was always on a pregame playlist that entire season. And I want to say this past season, it was still you hear something.
I'd be interested to see how many guys on there. This would be like an interesting story to pursue, but like the guys on the team right now are kind of around my age, your age. Like there's definitely some Cudi fans on the team around the league.
Oh, Shemmy's one. You know what? I told him about Kids See Ghosts. He didn't even know about it. And he said he listened to Reborn 4 times in a row one night.
Wow.
He said that song is like, he said, I'm obsessed with it, man. Like that song was just like his go-to for a while.
And we went to that tour. That tour was pretty good. It was a short set down there in South Boston. You bought my friend a beer, which I'll never forget.
I did. I completely didn't see that coming either. And I was like, all right, sure.
It's going to be like 2050 and he's still going to love you for that. That was a good show, but we went to that.
He owes me a beer next time I see him.
We were at that at the Speed and Boat to Heaven tour, which was outstanding. That album might not have been great, but that tour was phenomenal because you had the old tracks. The Speed and Boat to Heaven tracks were so good live because the instrumentation and everything, and you had other artists sit back in the background, obviously handling some of the production of that show. The staging was incredible, and it was a long set. It was like 2.5 hours of him doing songs. And then, you told us the whole story. You meeting him after. I met him after. Incredible moment. But yeah, so we're going to get into some of the backlash of this new album. This has been the thing with him over the years. Is like he makes people like us so happy. And are we the most objective people in the world about his work? Probably not. Like we'll talk ourselves into anything he does. But on the other end of it, you got people who just kind of want to crash the party, it seems like, or I don't know, talk some sense into people like that. Pitchfork review that came out this week, and it was such a great week until that came out. Like it was generally accepted as a pretty good album. I mean, social media was into it. People said it was a good moment. It kind of fit the bill for being a Man on the Moon 3. And then this Pitchfork review from Alphonse Pierre drops a 4.9, calling it the latest underwhelming installment of the rapper's cosmic album series. Arrives 11 years after the original and coasts on a legacy built a lifetime ago, which pretty much like doesn't even address the music all that much.
Right.
Just
Which
says like
really gets me to think that he had this opinion before he started.
yeah, like it just says
had the
that
opinion before he listened to it. Like,
yeah, it says the vibe aesthetics old fashioned and people are living in the past and middle school memories and
see, okay. If he would have said that he's trying this new sound and it's not working, okay, that's his opinion, which I would strongly disagree with. But okay, that's his opinion. But that's false. Like, sure, there's 3 or 4 songs that you get that vibe where you feel like you could, easily throw that on one of the older Cudi albums. But you also have a new sound in Cudi, right? Like, I feel like, yeah, Travis Scott may have influenced it as well, but at the same time, Cudi's made it his own. He's coined his own version of it. But then you have the race tracks where it's completely Cudi with a new sound, that a new revamped modern day version of Cudi that you could race to. Like I felt like you got a good dose of that as well.
yeah, I just don't get the purpose of this. And again, if you don't like the album, if you don't like the sounds he's getting into, I understand it. I think he puts a good spin on some of these modern sounds that he's attempting, especially we're going to say it a million times, the Travis Scott influence, which is cool because if you
Right.
have context, he inspired Travis Scott and now it's him looking backward at Travis and pulling from
Right.
him. And it's kind of the shared influence that they've had on each other.
What's a good example of that? I thought Damaged. What a great song, right? Damage, I feel like you could throw that on any, either one of the first 2 Man on the Moons, right? And people wouldn't bat an eye. They'd be like, oh, it must have been an add-on.
And
so
the Void for sure.
Oh, the Void for sure, yeah. But it has that sound, the hook at least. But the beat is modern. Like, that's something that him and Travis has been cooking up. Those two. And I obviously cannot wait for that project to come out. But I'm so glad that you could tell he spent a lot of time on this one, because I was afraid that he was going to rush this one to get to the Travis project. But no, he spent a lot of time on it, as you can tell. And then for him to put it out in December was a gift. I was afraid that was a you could tell that's why he was rushing it. And I'm like, nope, he put it out in December and it's a banger, man. Like, honestly, like, what were some of the low points of this album? Or what were the ones that you could say that, okay, maybe that one couldn't have, the album could do without it?
So the most divisive one's been the Pop Smoke Skepta track. And I liked it. I thought it was fun. I'm a Pop Smoke fan, but I'm not into that scene enough to say whether that represented a successful drill song or not. I think if you have a guy like Pop Smoke on there, and the backstory to this is that Pop Smoke was in the New York scene with Dr. Genius. They had a studio session. This was the beat that they were working with. And the song was kind of geared toward being one that worked with Kid Cudi. And then he obviously got killed a year ago or 2 years ago, however long ago it was now. And it ended up being repurposed into this kind of posthumous track here. Wasn't obviously done, a little incomplete as a posthumous track's going to be. Skepta comes in to fill this bridge. And I thought it was fun. And I thought Kid Cudi kind of rode on that beat. But if people are going to rip that track and say that this isn't a good drill song, then fine. Because I don't know enough about drill. I'm not from London. I'm not from New York. Like, I'm not in that scene enough to say if that was and it does kind of feel out of place on the album, if we're being honest. Like, it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. As soon as it dropped, I was just like, whoa, where are we going now? Yeah, that's true. But then when you hear the story behind it, it makes sense. Well, I liked it. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
I liked it too.
I don't know that much about that scene because I'm not too into it, but the fact that I like it, I'm like, okay, this is something that I shouldn't like, right? Like, I've never been a huge Skepta guy. I've heard his features. I've never actually listened to like his whole project, but like, yeah, that sounds sort of not me, but the bass on that, man, the beat, I was into it, but yeah, it sort of felt out of place in a way, the flow of the album. But I think after that song, the Mr. Solo and Sad People, that might be my favorite back-to-back, second to the ending, pretty much. Like, I just think the way he paired some of these songs together, like, it made the album coast through so easy, such a smooth transition. And before you know it, the album's over, and you're like, man, that was great. Let me restart it. Like, that's the kind of feel that you listen to a great album where, like, you can't wait for it to restart, or you're so surprised that it went through so fast and you didn't have to skip a track.
Yeah, most people seem to like the second half of this better. And I definitely like The Void a ton. Love and Me went over so well, and that's probably one of his most condensed, to the point, punching tracks in years that's just so focused and has great writing, great singing from both of them. I thought his singing on this album was exceptional. Probably
Yeah,
as good as it's
same.
ever been.
Yeah, no, same. I think it's up there. Yeah, in terms of his best albums, I think it's up there. Just the way he his hooks and his singing overall. What do you think about Rockstar Nights? That one grew on me like a little bit. Lately, it has been. At first, I was kind of like, it's all right.
I like the vibe of the track. I like what it's going for. I like the chemistry between them. Like those guys just seem to love each other. I'm not a Trippie Redd fan, so it doesn't go over that well for
I'm
me.
not either. That's why I was kind of like, his verse isn't that bad. His hook, and but no, the one that I'm addicted to right now is the Pale Moonlight, man. The Pale Moonlight and Lord I Know. I just thought that Lord I Know is such a great way to wrap up the album, and I think it goes perfectly with like the fans. It's like, I do this for you, and he puts it right after kids. I mean, for the kids, like, it's just a great send off and a great check in to be like, hey, no matter what, like, we're all still going through it. And that's nothing too I hate about the review. It's like, it's almost as if I got the vibe where it's like, wait a minute now, Kid Cudi, his first album dropped like over a decade ago. Is he still going through problems? It's just like, what life do you lead? Like, that's sort of the message I got from that review. It was like, Kid Cudi needs to get over this whole thing. Like, no one's into this anymore. But it's just like, no, life's still hard.
Which is objectively wrong. If you
Right.
want to review an album and say, I don't like the sound on here, it wasn't very cohesive.
Tell me about the music itself. Exactly.
Like
Get
that's
down to
something
the specifics.
that's something that's subjective, that you can kind of, you can say, someone can say an album's a 0, someone can say it's a 10, and no
Right.
one's right or wrong there. I think you can be wrong that this isn't having an impact on people anymore, that like the sound is worn thin, because you see the reaction on social
Right.
media and in the fan
Bobby,
base.
that's the whole point,
Yeah.
man. Kid Cudi's like, we're going through this together. And the only difference is 10 years ago, I didn't know what I know now. But here's what I know now. And we're still going to go through this day. Like, I just love the entire themes and all that, because it's so Cudi. And it's like a modern version of it where you're getting that music, that sound that's 2020 as well. It's great. It's a great album, honestly. Like, I just think, even if I'm not a Cudi guy, it's just a great album.
So the editor Genius tweeted out about that review, which obviously caused a stir, and said, like, he kind of gave some credence to it and said that maybe those tweets about Kid Cudi saved my life got a little bit cliche. And I'm like, if a million people are saying it, then it's
Right.
true.
Right.
Like,
See, that's the thing. It's like, all right, you're not into it. That's fine, but like, don't make it sound. Don't knock the music now. You know what I mean? Like, he just dropped a gem. He just dropped a masterpiece. Like, I don't know. Let's get into this, Bobby. Where are we ranking this? I know it's too early, because you get a good sense of how great an album is. It's just like, time has to pass. It doesn't matter if you listen to it all day, every day. You just have to let it like marinate for, let's say, I don't know, a year. But like, where would you rank it? Because I don't know, man. I think it certainly cracks the top 3.
I think it does too. I think you can firmly place this album above any of the other over the last decade. Indicud for sure. That track had a few good singles. Didn't Come Together as a great album. Wizard for sure. I thought that was his worst album. Speeding Boat to Heaven, certainly. We talked about Passion, Pain, and Demon Slaying. It's above that. I guess the only one that would come into competition with it is Kids See Ghosts, but that's kind of
Right.
dual collaboration album.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, if we're talking all his projects, yeah, I was just saying, I was thinking more of his solo project.
yeah.
Yeah.
See, I would, if we're putting together everything, I'd probably put Kids See Ghosts 2. That album is just so good, so
The
condensed.
first one, I think I do the same.
Yeah, over Man on the Moon 1. And I like Man on the Moon 2 the best still. It's tough to
Your
compare.
favorite Kid Cudi album?
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty
Mr.
cool. I didn't know that. That's what's
Mr. Rager, Ghost, the closing 3 tracks that you talked about. The first 2 tracks get off to a slow start, but the singles and the deep tracks on there come together in such a way
Yeah.
that it runs the best start to finish for me. So that would be my one. I don't think you can put Man on the Moon 3 behind anything we've heard over the last decade solo wise. It's honestly pretty easy.
Yeah. No, definitely. When you get to that point where you're like, man, I can't stop listening to this album. I got to that point, probably like, I don't know, handful of listens, and I was just like, do I dare put this next to the second one? But then I thought about it, and I was like, songs like Ghost and Rev of Ev, like, there's just like 3 or 4 songs that like you can put up there as some of his best songs.
Mojo So Dope.
Right. Mojo So Dope. Oh man, how could I forget? So like, but like just the overall flow of this album and like how cohesive it is, like I think that's what's gonna, in the end, that's what's gonna live on. You're gonna be like, yeah, just let that play. Like it's just one of those albums you can just let play, and you're not skipping tracks here and there like you will with Indica or his other projects.
Yeah, those first 2 are always going to be hard to beat. I don't think this lived up quite to those first 2 because those happened in such a time and such a level of hunger in his life.
Right, but I was surprised that I asked myself that question, Bob. I didn't think this album would be. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect, but I was just a little weird because of how quick the putting it out, because the Eminem song wasn't on there. It wasn't like he had a single beforehand, and then he was talking about new music in 2021, and then all of a sudden it's coming out in 5 days. So, but no, he put it together nicely though.
It came so fast, and it did build on so much of what he did on Kids See Ghost. I think of 2 moments on this album. The maniacal flow on the second half of She Knows This. And you mentioned Damage is kind of that modern track with a Cudi flair. She Knows This for me is like off the rails. The only song I can think of, and again, we go back to this Travis Scott thing, Sicko Mode. This is kind of Cudi's answer to Sicko Mode with the beat switch, with the rapid fire flow on the second half. And it's so dark, it's so maniacal. And when he gets in that zone flow wise, he's actually a pretty damn good rapper. Like we think of him as being great for the versatility, but when he dives in, he can really rap.
Right. And then it's just like his own flow. Like it's like a way, a style that no one else can duplicate and sounds great the way he does it. Another song, Heaven on Earth, man. And that comes out right after. Again, like some of these songs, the way they go back to back like that, that's what makes it such a smooth listen. And those are the parts of the album where I'm like, man, he's really digging in now. I thought that sort of, you know what? He had 2 songs on Indica that were like that. Was it Burn Baby Burn? And the other one where he's just like flowing just off the top, like, or seemed like that way, like almost like that freestyle flow to it. And you had that same message being like, man, I'm gonna show everyone that I still got it. I'm going through it, but I know how to do it now. Like I just love all that, man. It's just Kid Cudi exemplifies that, and the more you listen to it, the more you really listen to what he's saying. I feel like, especially, like you just get into what he's saying, and like exactly what he's been through because he's showed it to you. He's been so honest, like he's been so transparent.
Cold Blooded was the track on there that stuck out for me in that way on Indica. So
which one was it?
Cold Blooded.
Yeah. Cold Blood at the end. That's the last one. Yeah.
One of the last tracks on there.
Before the big song, yeah.
And then that was kind of around the time he had the falling out with Good Music, and he was trying to push to do his own thing. And that's what hurt him, I think. If we think about what he's doing here the last few years, he did get back to his bread and butter. Like it's a different way of doing it, but we think of Reborn, which is probably his most successful track of the last 5 years. And when we think of this album, like The Void and some of those like quintessential Cudi tracks are still what you like most about him. It's great to see him experiment. It's great to see him try new things and push boundaries and all those. Free on Kids See Ghosts is certainly an album that pushes boundaries a little bit. But you still think of those quintessential Cudi tracks that are what like he gets back to with the producers he was successful early on in his career with. And I didn't think we were going to get a Man on the Moon 3, but like for him to get to that, like shows the place he's at where he's focused, he's on a mission, and he's trying to deliver what fans have been waiting for a long time.
And it wasn't one of those albums where he just slapped the name on it. It feels like a Man on the Moon. Yeah. It has that feel to it.
That's what he said.
I like it sounds. I like how he's trying that because I think it's going to generate a new fan base. Like it's been 10 years since the first one. Like it's crazy, or over 10 years. And now you see this new crowd or new wave of fans, new fans that are just now getting into Kid Cudi, or at least the deep cuts in the way it is nowadays, where it's just at your fingertips, you can stream. And you think of, this is Travis Scott influence, but I also think Cudi's created his own, like this new generation, man, just for everyone to sort of vibe with. It's the same message, the same motto. And that's what would have messed up everything, right? If he was talking about something completely different, and if he took his approach change, but he didn't, and that sound and those feels, man. But what if your close circles have said though? What are your friends?
So I think they've generally liked it, which is fair. Like they don't think it's amazing, they don't think it's bad. So I can always accept that. We're gonna
Right.
go crazier than most people over something like this. It's not
What?
gonna.
Why'd you go crazy about it most? Like, be honest. Like, because with me, man, again, there was like the journey, and it was just like him taking me through like almost like we went back to like '09 and stuff, and like those sort of
And
feelings.
it's so funny because that's what the review is ripping us for.
It's
Like,
like what, man? Like, man,
it,
years ago I was a kid. I didn't know what I was gonna do with my life. Now I'm here. Like, you relate in your own way. Whether it's oh man, I could talk all night about this stuff, man. But you get what I'm saying? Like those themes where it's like, man, I don't know if I'm good enough one day, but the next day you're like, no, I can take on the world. And it's just like that weaving through those emotions that you see Cudi go through in this album.
it's something to lean on in the tough times. And
Especially
when
in 2020, man. Yeah.
when you and that's another contextual thing that helps it too. It ended this awful year for a lot of people with some hope, with something to lean on and help
Mm-hmm.
them through a moment. And when I think back to Man on the Moon 2, Man on the Moon 1, and so many people can relate to this, it was hard times, uh, middle school into high school, uncertainty in your life, maybe not having the most successful social life at that time, or
Mm-hmm.
school was getting you down, or just kind of life in general was tiring you down, wearing you down. You had some issues with a girl or something that you did, you
Mm-hmm.
liked and didn't get it. It
Right.
gave you something to lean on in those times. And for a lot of people, those times going through middle school, going through high school, and the confidence issues and those things that hit you around those times can be some of the hardest moments of your life. And to
Oh,
have
definitely.
something as powerful and relatable and speaking to you in that way at those times is like, there really is something so powerful that, so you listen to it, you're taken back to that time, you're hearing the sounds of that era in a new way where we've both grown up, we've both gotten
Mm-hmm.
past those moments like Cudi has at this point. And it's sort of like you're following this timeline with him that,
Yep.
we've both gotten a pretty good points in our life. We're both kind of living our dream, covering
Mm-hmm.
basketball, doing shows here, just like, this is always what we envisioned ourselves doing. And this album for Cudi, it's going to be his most successful album ever. And why is that? Like, it's a victory lap of sorts. Like,
Yeah.
we got through it. We made it to this point. So many people have been influenced by this. And now this is going to be a celebratory week for us. And this is what it felt like. Like, that night where it dropped, everybody was just like, boom, headphones on. We're
Yeah.
doing this. And then the whole week after, until the stupid review, was all celebration, was all good feeling. And
No, I know,
like,
but
and
you know
even
what? Let's take the review because that way we can make fun of it the way we are right now. You know?
yeah,
So
yeah. And like people who've reviewed him tough in the past had good
yeah.
reviews for this. So I think the consensus was that it was. What did your friends think? What did Sean and all of them think about it?
Oh, they love it, and I wasn't quite sure because I was just like, it's kind of emotional, it's kind of deep, but then the cuts, the party, the upbeat ones. I'm like, they'll probably love that one. Sean went crazy about it, and most of my friends are like, yeah, it's not bad. Kid Cudi's, I almost felt like it wasn't him at first, or at least parts of the album. They're like, man, it almost didn't sound like him. I'm like, oh no, it's all him. So it was good, man, and I just think Kid Cudi again, he just speaks to that crowd of people who've always followed him for the last, over close to a decade or over a decade. But now there's a space for new listeners, man, new followers. But yeah, man, I just thought those vibes were there when he takes you back to being that kid. I mean, that song started growing me more, the LC's Boy. But again, those last 45 seconds, I think my childhood flashed before my eyes, man. Like, it just has that feel to it. It's like you're going back in time and you're thinking like, when you were not quite sure about yourself, or maybe you were you didn't do great in school, and I just think Cudi, those stories, him, because of those stories that he told you in the first album, and then now where he is now. You think about where you are now, and that's what it is, with Cudi fans, like that relatability. It's like I'm with you in the ups and downs, and then when you're raging in that stage of your life, like it's the way Kid Cudi was, because you weren't quite sure. It's like, okay, this guy feels the same way I do, or he's been through it, or he's in a space where I was or used to be. So yeah, man, it's great. It's just it's another chapter to an amazing career for Cudi, for sure. This album.
And it's just the start of like a second prime for him, almost. It could be like it feels like new music is.
That after Kids See Ghosts, man, like I was like, yo, he just blew Kanye West out of the water. Like, give me more 7 tracks, damn it. Like, I know you recorded at least 2 more. Like, put those out. I need bonus tracks. Like, man, that album was incredible because one, he was rapping, two, you knew he was in a great space, and then the hooks, three, the hums and everything. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is like a new version of him. But then you're like the Kanye beats. I'm like, you're not gonna have that in this new one. So I don't know if he's gonna have the same sort of, but man, the beats. He went back to the day ones, man. Plain Pat, what up? Remember that drop? He's always play. Yeah, man.
Yeah, so this is his number. It was number 2 release behind Taylor Swift because that came out the same day. The Scots.
Why did she have to drop an album this week? Damn it.
It could have been his first number 1 album. So the Scots number 1 Billboard hit. That was the first of his career.
That was his first, yeah.
So this has just been a massive year for him, sale wise, popularity wise. Who knows? He can maybe even get a Grammy nomination next year for an album for the first time. I think it would be so amazing.
I'm so mad at Grammys, man. You know why I'm mad at them, right?
Why's that?
Mac, bro. Come on. But we won't get into it. That's another episode.
Well, we're gonna do some end of the year stuff next week with my man Mel Smith, who I usually talk music with around here on the Bobcast Dome Theory. Appreciate Joe Sway being by. What were some of your favorite stuff otherwise this year? Mac, of course. That was an album that was just on replay forever. Probably the best of his career. I mean, we've talked about that at length on here, but what else stuck out to you this year?
Man, Jay Electronica. That I don't think I'll forget that day because obviously no one knows Jay's on it. I'm like, oh, okay, so intro. That makes sense. Oh, okay.
It was almost a collaboration album.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, he's getting him started. And I'm like, oh, this is a whole album. This is literally the day after the NBA just announced that the COVID-19 season suspended. I'm walking outside, listening to this in my headphones, like it looks like the world's about to end. So it was that whole vibe where the world was at that time, the way Jay comes in swinging in that first track. Yeah, that one's up there for me for sure. That Mac. Big Sean, I was crazy about for like a week, and then that grew off of me, man. I don't know what happened there. What you think about that one?
A little bloated, a little overdone.
Yeah, but there's like 5 songs I was really into it, and they didn't have much replay value, obviously, I guess.
He's like a workout artist for me, where he just makes these nice, inspiring tracks. I think he's a good rapper, which matters to me. But I don't connect on it on a very high level. And outside of his 3rd and 4th albums there, the ones that are widely considered to be his best after the first 2, he hasn't overall done it for me. I don't love his first 2 albums. I haven't loved the stuff since The Light and all that stuff came out. So, it was good. There were some good moments on there. I think he's good. I don't have any problem with his style, or he's just not my favorite. He's a good rapper.
Right. No, I've always felt like that too. I was like, I like his music, but I'm just like, when's he gonna take it to the next level? I thought this was it, but
and he was close. I always say that. Like, there was a time where Drake was rolling in 2014, 15. Kendrick obviously around that time, and Big Sean was getting rolling in a way that made you think he could leap to that next level. But he was doing Drake things at a rate that wasn't as high and prolific as Drake. So if you're doing that around that time, you kind of were going to get washed to the side.
Yeah. No, definitely. Who else? I'm talking about 2020, right?
Yeah, Freddie Gibbs was one of my favorite for sure.
Freddie wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. What's the one that dropped a couple months ago? He dropped 2 albums this year. What's his name? I'm drawing a blank. I want to go check my title. But
West Side Gun?
No.
Who had 2 albums this year?
He's from New York guy. Damn it. I'm forgetting his name. I'll get back to you. Who else dropped an album this year? There was a whole lot of great Well, there were like these EPs that I liked. Vic wasn't that bad. He
had a good comeback year. I'd say he was comeback artist of the year.
Dirt on My Name was a great song.
Mm-hmm.
Great song. The EP wasn't bad. It was. I don't know if I like that one better than the one he dropped before that. Not the rock one. The one it was like a couple years ago, I think.
Yeah, that was I got that one on vinyl. That was an excellent debut for him. Another guy who's gone through a lot of troubles, and it's good to see him seemingly doing well again. I just seen he did a homeless sleep out in Chicago for homeless awareness. He slept outside all night. Always doing charitable stuff. I mean, he's been on the Black Lives Matter ride like from day one. So that's a guy I've always had respect for, always enjoyed.
He puts it on wax too, which is great. He's always been talking about it.
Yeah. So it was a good year, I thought. Overall, I thought it was outstanding. The Weeknd had his best album ever, I thought.
And then he got robbed by the Grammys. Man.
We're gonna talk a lot about that next week.
You got to put him in like a category. You can't just cast him out, man.
You know what's so weird about that, and it's seemingly obvious because he had to do the Super Bowl or the Grammys,
but
and he
that's not
chose the
fair.
Super Bowl.
That's not fair. Like, I don't think that should be that's up to him. Like, I don't think, because a lot of people, that's the only logical explanation, I guess.
That's a conspiracy. If you're getting realistic about it, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of voters, and I just can't imagine how, when you think of what they prioritize, which is like sales, pop appeal, influence, like it had all of that. It was the biggest album ever. It's like you could make an argument that this was the biggest album ever sales wise. It was on the Billboard top 10 for more weeks than any album in Billboard history.
#1 song too. Yeah, no question. Especially 2020.
Blinding Lights was probably the song of the year.
I think he broke a record with that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like still #1 during a pandemic.
That album was special in a way that like you enjoyed it, even though it kind of had that mass appeal. Like normally songs that are on the radio all the time and everybody knows about and sell at that level don't have an appeal. But that was like a quintessential weekend album. It had that weekend appeal to it with some of those bigger pop tracks, mainstream successes. Like it kind of hit the best of both worlds somehow in a way that, I don't think was fully appreciated this year, but I think we're still going to look back on that album in 10, 20 years as like essential music for the start of this decade.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, for sure. I'm just wondering what he's gonna come up with next time.
I don't know.
Sound like
he's been inconsistent with some of his releases since his mixtape days.
You missed those days, the R&B, the old.
I wasn't into it at the time. I've gone back into it as he's gotten more popular, and you see the influence that it's had on R&B. Kind of more melodic, druggy. Heartsick music that has like a synth hip hop appeal to it. So he's been massively influential, and you think of what he's done for Drake's career, going back to that Take Care album.
Oh, he's influenced an entire generation, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's gonna go down as probably one of the 3 most important artists of our generation. Probably you'd think it's gonna be Drake, Kendrick Lamar from a rap perspective, without a doubt. And then from that R&B lane, I don't think anyone's been more successful in R&B over the last decade or two than The Weeknd.
I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Drake with this album, because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, man, the last couple albums, like Scorpion, I mean, I don't think it should have been double disc or whatever, but, and then to come now, like
the demo tracks was his worst album ever. And I don't know why he's doing this thing now where he kind of lowers the expectations coming in. It's like what Brad Stevens is doing right now with Aaron Naismith. Like,
it really is. Yeah, you're right.
But
he'll make sure that he has a #1 radio hit, or at least 2 of them. But it's like, what I loved about Drake was that he gave you a great body of work. Like those first 3 albums, I just feel like it's just been declining, and then it'll go up a little bit one album and then decline the last one. Like, I'm just like, I almost forgot about that album because I went through it 3, 4, 5 times. It just never grew on me,
What can we say? His whole thing is I got more slaps than the Beatles. Like, the singles are good. He's had some legendary singles, to be certain. Hold On, We're Going Home. I love the Lauryn Hill sample that he threw out there on that Scorpion album. I can't think of the track's name.
I just want to Take Care, man. I want another Take Care album or something like that, something close to that. We get that nice blend of the R&B with the hip hop, the club. You can play it in the club, and then it's just smooth. You can let the thing play through. Like, that's Drake to me. Like, to me, that's him at his best. When he's doing a little bit of both.
Well, let's consider this. Kid Cudi absolutely made the better drill album than Drake ever would, or the better drill song rather.
Yeah, but I just feel like it's like you get full singing for like 5 tracks in a row. You might get a couple like the Jay-Z cut, like that's a great cut, on the Scorpion album. And I think one half of it was more hip hop. I think that was the one. And like, I don't know. I just think he gets a little lazier now with the raps. I think he puts more emphasis on the singing, whereas the raps used to be hard, man. The bars used to come harder, I feel
Well,
like.
he's a strong singer, and that was a good choice he made early on, was that I'm going to lean on my singing because it's a strength of mine. I'm not the best rapper in the world, but there's an acceptance out here for singing. I can kind of fuse R&B and rap sounds because those were always separate in the 2000s. You know, you
Right,
have
but
kind
now
of
it's like he's on a feature, you know? When he really goes off, it's not his song, you know? When he's rapping, I feel like.
yeah, Sicko Mode was one of his best moments of the last 10
Man.
years. Yeah.
Well, I guess technically it's his song, but you know,
No, that
with
was Travis' song.
Life is Good. No, I'm saying Life is
Oh,
Good. It's another example. Like it's like if someone's with him, or it's like he gets into this new space, and it's like, okay, that's the Dre. You know, like he's just like,
well, he does have a
he,
sound. Like, believe it or not, he does have a sound, and that song's it. He doesn't lean
pretty
on it
much.
much anymore. He's always trying new things or trying to ride on some waves. We all know the story with Drake at this point. Like, we
That's
don't have
true.
to. We're not saying stuff people don't know at this point about him.
See, but just be you, man. Like Cudi's always him. It might be out there, but he's gonna experiment. He's gonna come back to where he is. Put it this way: if you don't, if he doesn't go out and make those albums, do you get Kids See Ghosts, or do you get Man on the Moon 3? I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna be in the same creative space.
Well, you know what's so interesting is you look back on that time where 808s and Heartbreak came out, an album that definitely
Oh
inspired
man.
both of them. Uh, Kid Cudi had a chance to be Drake, a slight chance. I don't think he ever would have reached that
Yo,
point.
oh, facts, bro. No, you're pretty much saying what I'm saying, but in a different way. Like, yeah, he could have chose that route, but he's
Because
like,
let's
no,
think 2010. I mean, they were both getting started at the same time. And
right.
Thank Me Later, Man on the Moon 1. I mean, that's not even a discussion. And then, Take Care, Man on the Moon 2. Probably, fairly comparable albums. Take Care beats it out, but like,
Yeah, but
Man on the
Bobby, but
Moon.
what was the big difference about those two though? Like, I think at that time it was sort of cool to be emotional and talk about your feelings, but they made it sound really cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they sort of put that at the forefront, where like being vulnerable and sharing your, but also being like, yeah, I'm also the man. I got swag. I don't know, swag to death. But hey, at night, I think about stuff. Like, I feel like they both epitomize that, but they both went like two different directions. But Cudi could have easily done the same, you know?
Well, Cudi just, I mean, he left the label. He started producing
Right.
everything. He
What
got
is
so experimental that he never had a chance. So, doesn't really matter, but it's just something to think about. It's a what if.
But you would have gotten like a watered down Kid Cudi, you know? Whereas, I mean, is this a watered down Drake? I don't know. I'm not quite sure if Drake and Cudi are like in the same sort of art. I mean, they're not. They're very different artists, but they're sort of similar in that sense, though. It's interesting. Like, it's a fascinating discussion. If Cudi's stays with Kanye the way he stayed with Wayne just in the beginning, right? First couple of albums, and then yeah, I don't know.
Well, could Cudi have handled that level of success and what came with
Oh
it,
yeah,
given
that's true.
some of the stuff he was going through when he started his career? I don't know. Maybe some of the more experimental stuff ended up being therapeutic from it. I mean, you definitely get the
That's what
sense,
I think.
especially with Mac Miller dying in the last year. Like, more than anything, you're just happy to still have Kid Cudi around at this point,
Right.
given what he's gone through. And like, that's another thing that added to some of the emotion of that Man on the Moon 3. Because it's like when Man on the Moon 2 came out, and he said this himself, who knows if I'd be here much longer past this.
Yeah. No, definitely. And especially at that time where I feel like, I don't know if he was sort of like, I don't know if I fit. I think he was like, I don't know if I fit in with these guys because the whole Good Friday thing, I think he was on like a couple of songs, but he didn't have a whole lot of time. Pusha was working a lot with Kanye. At that time, he's like, what's next for me? Like, what's my sound going to be like? And I think that sort of had a lot to do with him leaving Good. I don't think it was more as like, oh, I need to get away from Kanye and do my own thing. It was more like, you guys have your own thing going on here. I'm going to, venture off on my own. And I think that's when it got really dark because of what was going on in his life. And he talked about it in the Low interview about, being a father and not sure if if he's in a good space to take care of himself, let alone bringing a girl into the world. So, yeah.
So great. His acting career is on fire. He looks happy. You see the smile on his face. People are sending him so much positive feedback, and he's able to give that back out. Like, this was a celebration week in so many ways. So, who cares about the reviews? Who cares how we look back on this? Like, it was a week of celebration, no matter how we end up looking back on this album in 10 years. Probably not going to look back on it as anything legendary, but it was good. It was enjoyable, and it threw back to an era, which I think is what music does. It takes you back to some place. When you look back on it in 5-10 years, you remember what you were doing at that time. And I always love that. Something I always ask on this too. I wonder if you have an answer for this, because I was thinking about it all day and I really couldn't come up with a perfect comparison. Who's the Kid Cudi of the NBA?
Oh man, that's a good one. Because they had to be someone sort of keeps himself, sort of has their own motto, but like, I don't know, man. I have to get back to you on that.
I'm thinking of, so I couldn't think of necessarily someone who's had an impact like that, who got a ton of vitriol. Maybe like a Lou Williams, or someone who like had that level of allure. Jamal Crawford, even, who, is like a six man who kind of embodied a play style, who people love, but people know isn't like the greatest artist in the world. There's someone that you would look
but
back.
They have that following where that people they idolize their game after. Yeah.
Jamal Crawford could be that guy. I also look back on it as someone like, let's say, Carmelo. First year comes in with a ton of hype, has a great career. I mean, we're looking at Kid Cudi, say there was a rap Hall of Fame. I mean, he would be a rap Hall of Famer, but you look back on some of the inconsistencies over the years, and he never won the ring per se. Cudi never had the number one album, you could say. So Carmelo could fit that bill too. I guess the third angle I could take on it is someone in the game who people respect, probably more than the average fan respects. And I take that to Avery Bradley. Avery Bradley was never an all-star, probably not a good enough player to meet Cudi's standard, because I think people would say Cudi was a better artist than Bradley was a player. And I think almost everyone agree about that. But I picked Bradley because other players respected him and his defense and the way he approached the game more than anybody. It felt like people would always say Bradley's the best perimeter defender in the league, just like people would say Cudi inspired a whole entire generation. But I think
your mellow is spot on, Bobby. Now that I think about it, the more and more I think about it, you know why?
Because he gets maligned.
The Renaissance year, oh no, he can't. He's done. And then boom, now he's back. It's like, oh, you guys. And then you know what else too? The fan base. You can't tell Melo fans shit. Like, they will defend that guy forever. If Hall of Fame conversation comes up, like, there's nothing he can do. He can do no wrong. Same thing with Cudi fans. I think that's the one.
We're gonna write that.
People are gonna be like, oh, is Melo actually, that's kind of ridiculous, but maybe some people be like, is Melo in the Hall of Fame? Or something along those lines. Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame, but they'll put an asterisk. I think that's sort of, people say that about Kid Cudi. Like, yeah, he influenced a generation, but it was just this one group of people who were obsessed with him. I think that fan base that bodes well with Melo for sure.
You know who I said Gordon Hayward was? This is a good one. Logic.
Yeah, that's perfect. That is perfect. But what's the cop out though? Because the injuries for Hayward to him would be what? He doesn't care about being commercial success or whatever. I don't know. What do diehard Logic fans say?
That's a good question. I don't know what
that would be. Something along those lines, that like he doesn't want to sell out, or like he could sell out if he wanted to, but he's true to his brand.
I guess the lineage would be it, because his first two albums were excellent, just like Hayward's Utah track record was impeccable. Right. He gets better every single year. He gets
his all-star years with the mixtapes, right?
Mm-hmm. So he goes to the mixtapes. The first two albums were good. Then he just gets so big. I guess he gets that big contract in Boston with just like everybody with Logic, where it just kind of got too big and bloated. He was trying to do too much. Whereas, you can't really compare an injury to anything musically. But, once it got big, the expectations grew through the roof, and he didn't meet them as well with those last few albums. That album Logic had this year, which was, for mentioning which I guess is his last album.
That's what he said, right?
Victory Lap in its own right. I thought that was one of the best albums. And Cudi had situations this year, back to like their original sound, did something that their fans love.
Yeah, who's Chance the Rapper? Yeah, I got it. This is fun. Who's Chance the Rapper in the NBA? Well, he's not in the NBA anymore, but you're not gonna get this one. Maybe.
So when did he leave?
Someone who like peaked really early and then unfortunately, it was injuries. I'm not saying Chance is injured right now, but that last album, you know, people kind of like, is he gonna come back swinging again? Did he peak early?
Who
I was
is
thinking
it?
Brandon Roy.
That's who I was thinking. I didn't name it. No.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Oh man, you should have said it.
I should have said
I don't know if
it.
you remember Brandon Roy, but Brandon Roy was, oh man,
He was Damian Lillard before Damian Lillard.
Exactly, like literally, like I'm not just because he played for Portland, like literally his game, like those ballsy like stepaways where it wasn't like, well, he does now because it's Steph Land is, you know, he created that, but back then it was not quite Steph Land, but almost Steph Land, and it was the unthinkable in those years. It was like, you don't shoot from back there, like it was ridiculous. He could move off the ball, he could do anything he wanted, like he couldn't keep defenders couldn't stay in front of him. So yeah, because Chance, that acid rap, man, that'll go down. Like that era will go down in history. And
so you see, this is
the album.
This is what makes that comparison tricky. So, you know, injuries are so impossible that I guess you could say, like, I don't know, going to jail or substance abuse issues or something on the artist side. I don't know what you would compare it to the level of, I don't know if it's arrogance or just kind of too much success too early for Chance that seemingly impacted what he's been doing the last 2 years. There was a story that came out in a smaller publication. You know, I wish I could give them credit off the top here, but it was a smaller publication wrote that so Chance dropped his manager in the last year or so leading up to the big day release that he had last year. And the manager had apparently warned him that he was doing this too fast. I guess the album was recorded over 2 months hastily without much feedback from the manager or anyone else. It was just kind of his family operation going on. And they ended up firing the manager, Chance, and his family because the tour flopped. If you remember, they were doing a tour for the big day. And he had a
selling, right?
Yeah, because people hated the album. It was a garbage album.
Yeah.
Oh my God, It was terrible.
And I was so excited for when it came out, man.
It was looking like it was gonna. I mean, he had the victory lap with coloring book of coming off those mixtapes, and I thought that was his debut album. But then he's like, "This is my debut album," and it was just horrendous. I mean, TikTok music and just awful lyrics front to back, and the features made no sense. It was one of the worst albums with the anticipation that I've ever heard.
It just got worse and worse, man. I listened to like 3 times. Like this album is bad.
Usually there's one song that you can be like, all right, I'm walking away with this song, even though it's a bad album. That one did not.
Hey, 5-year plan was all right. That was it. I think 5-year plan, and then
he still has moments.
The one with Nicki I liked for a little bit, and then I was like, this is terrible.
So the manager sued because he got fired. Looking for
the one with Nicki, I thought it was good for a little bit. Then I was like, no, this is terrible.
So apparently there's a battle between Chance's camp and the manager over the blame game over that album. But you hear the manager's side of the story that this was thrown together too fast. He was getting married at the time, Chance was. And so it just wasn't a formula for success and expectations that he was setting out there for the fans. And the manager basically said, you put out a product that was inducive to fans not showing up to a tour. I think he's got a good case. I don't know how that holds up legally, but it kind of sets the scene of what he did and just how he probably got too big too fast. I mean, how old is he at this point? He's not that old.
Yeah, I also think the pressure was on too, right? Because it was like, well, how are you going to follow this up? Like, what direction are you going to go in, right?
I don't know, because he followed up Acid Rap, which already had big expectations.
Yeah, but Acid Rap, I feel like this was the first, like, and I know he's not on a major label, but it was just like his first, like, he was all over the radio, you know, like that album after Acid Rap, I feel like was like, you have to follow that up with a different, almost like a different sound, but it was like, which way are you going to go? I was thinking about The Weeknd after he dropped his first album, like, are you going to go more pop or are you going to keep the hip hop thing going? And I felt like he was sort of stuck in that place and like he was sort of trying to create like this new sound and it just didn't work out. And maybe that was it. Maybe they just rushed it and he didn't get enough opinion on it. And he just thought it was better than it actually was. But I also think that he was obsessed with like having it come out close to when he got married, which I don't understand why like that was so important to him. But yeah, I just don't know where he's gonna go from here. I feel like, you know, I'm thinking of like if he goes more hip hop, you know, is he gonna have more bars? I feel like he's gonna most likely go more towards the singing route, you know?
Well, he's been meme-ified too with the whole "I love my wife" thing, and that's gonna be so hard for him to get past. Which is another fault of that album. Like, there was a way to go at that topic and make it interesting and kind of go back on his infidelities and the issues that he's had with his relationship and
Right.
the coming to like there was a formula for success there for a great album with the changes that he had made in his life and the kids that he had, and I guess he did that to some degree on Coloring Book. And his religion certainly too has been an interesting topic
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah.
Like he had things to work with there, but it just came out so flat and bland and underdone, and the lyrics were so horrible. I mean, you will go back and look on the lyrics on that album. It was just like, what's going on here? Like it was like Drake minus the ghostwriters.
When we had all that extra time in our hands, I remember I did it and I didn't say anything to Sean about it, but then Sean texted me and just goes, you know, with so much time on my hands, I decided to revisit the Chance album. Yep, it still sucks.
Yeah.
Did the same thing last week. I was like, let me give this another go. Because you know what I did? I grabbed the song that I like the most and I made my own playlist like months ago when the album just dropped. So I was like, let me go back to that playlist. I'm not going to hear the whole album again. And even that playlist, I'm like, this is brutal, man. I can't listen to this.
Do we go Kyrie there?
Could be. That could be a good one. But if Kyrie is, you know,
we did the whole
up until this point, I think it's perfect because we don't know what's gonna happen. Where the success if it's gonna happen or not.
See, we said Kanye in the group chat last week, and it doesn't fit. Like Kyrie did not do anything early. He won a championship and he became a global icon and all that. I don't know if the body of work met what Kanye was doing because Kanye put together probably the best.
I look at it more as just like his mouth. You know, he's just like this.
Oh, it can be a mix of a few people for doing a comparison, but I don't know. Did Kyrie get too big, too fast off that championship and think that he could do it alone? And when he Boston 2019 can be his big day.
Sometimes I feel like, man, Kyrie doesn't know what he really, really wants to do. I don't know. Like I obviously think he has fun playing basketball, but I'm like, can you not sleep at night thinking about championship? Like, and I'm not questioning like his heart because I think he gives it all he has when he's on the court. But sometimes I wonder if like it's like not quite sure like Brooklyn is the thing. Like it's like, okay, first you want to get away from LeBron, then it's like, oh, I want to bring a chip to Boston, you know. And then it's like, oh, I want to go back home. It's like, you really want to do these things, or is just like next year going to be a new thing, you know? But
so this is what makes me so uncomfortable about this whole Kyrie thing, and we've addressed it like crazy on the show.
Right.
We've talked about it on Twitter. I mean, we covered him for a couple of years here. The media at large and social media and TV shows and everything else just lambast him in this way that's probably deserved because he has brought vitriol toward himself, and I think he's been a shaky teammate and he's brought criticism on himself. I think it's earned, and I don't think he's above criticism. So when we think of him not doing media, it's like, you know, everybody's going to face the microphone. So like, why don't you answer? Because you're not even the best player on the team. If Durant says he doesn't want to do it, then, but whatever, I don't care. Like, I don't need to get the quotes from him at the podium and the cliches and all that stuff. That doesn't really do it for me the way it does other people. But I think there's a real story here that we're not getting at, that I think we're going to look at years from now and be like, just what happened there to him mentally? Like, where was he at that time? What prevented him? And injuries have been a part of it too. But we really are talking about one of the great talents we've ever seen at the point guard position. The handles, the scoring ability, like a volcano. If you remember him in Cleveland, like he would just go on these, what was it, game 5 against Golden State, the comeback year? I think him and LeBron both had 40 in that game. So like he was just a prolific scorer at the level that could match LeBron James. So like what happened? Was it mental? Did he go to a bad situation in Boston that just fell apart because of Hayward's injury? And would that have gone better if Hayward never got hurt? Did he just get too within himself mentally and kind of start to second guess everything he does and say, do I have a bigger purpose than basketball, and get too distracted with that? Like, you know, what's interesting about him is some of the stuff they said about Jaylen Brown. You know, is his head too off the court? Is he too smart? Is he overthinking things? That was actually true about Kyrie, it seems.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. But I think the biggest difference is that Jaylen is not as outspoken, you know? And I think the headlines that Kyrie gets, it's like, okay, now you have our full attention. And he continues to do it again and again. It's just kind of like, wait, like, is this your thing now? And I think that's what it is. This ongoing relationship with the media, it just doesn't do him any favors. And then when he said they didn't want to speak to the media altogether, I just think everyone took it as like, well, here he goes again, trying to stir up something before the season even starts, you know?
That's the thing about the media too. And we see it here in Boston, the way the Celtics media is.
Yeah, but Bobby, nowadays it's like, Kyrie, you are the media. Like, you could be, like, you sort of control the narrative nowadays. And if you don't like it, you can change it on social media. Like, I just think nowadays, like, athletes have such a powerful voice that, like, the narrative,
I'm not
they
even
have.
talking like that. It's so easy. If you're nice to the media, they're gonna be
Oh
nice to
yeah.
you. And if you're an ass, like it just brings like a reign of terror on you. It's Trump. Like if Trump like was nice in press conferences, it probably would have done a 180 for his, but instead he just dug in and then it brought back stuff on him. And it's not a perfect comparison there, but it's the way the media works. If you're nice to reporters and you work with them, like it's just going to reflect in their coverage. And then if you're an ass to them, it's just going to bring a reign of terror down on you when stuff comes around that way. Like that's really how it is. Look at Grant Williams. I mean, the Celtics media loves that guy because he's a big smile and he answers the questions all great. And is that the way it should be? No, but it's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't too. I just think you don't have to sort of go out of your way to say things also. I don't think you have to sort of like smile all the time and be chipper with the media. But I think what Kyrie sort of struggled with was like maybe being in Boston with so many different other guys who had a voice, maybe not as strong as his, but it was a tough balance of younger guys mixed with the guy who won the championship, So maybe it was too much of that. I know what's better. I know what's good for you, so just listen to me. And I just, months of that can really get old, regardless of who you are, whether Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown.
There were so many guys on that team.
And he's not only saying it to them, it's like you're saying it to the media too. It's like, oh, all right, like,
and
what
that's
are we doing
where
here? Who's being most professional here? Like,
that's where criticism gets warranted too. And there's the people out there who defend them to high hell, like, oh, you don't ever have to talk to the media, and like, what have they done for you and this and that, which I guess is true to some degree. But at the same time, I don't think he's above criticism. Like he has done things in the context of basketball. I'm not saying this guy's a super villain.
Right.
But like ripping teammates, saying young guys aren't ready who had just gone to the East Finals without him, leaving LeBron and leaving that team high and dry the next year when they just got smoked almost in the East Finals and then the finals because they didn't have him.
Or I guess LeBron wasn't clutch enough, I guess.
Where did that come from? I didn't hear that.
Like, is that his way of saying, like, yeah, you got that great block on Iguodala, but I hit the shot, motherfucker? Like, are you trying to like say that? It's like, no, I'm the clutch guy. So just in case you thought that that's a huge clutch play, no. Another reminder that I won that for us. It's like, okay, Kyrie, like,
and there it is
so
again.
LeBron's not clutch. Like LeBron's been clutch for over a decade now. I remember when he wasn't. I do.
Is that what it was? The shot, the amount of. We talk about the media. I mean, the media made him out to be a legend off that shot. Like they did some great things for him coming off that one moment, and he was great in that entire playoff run. But again, it was one playoff run in Cleveland. He'd never made the playoffs before LeBron got there. And so did he just get to a level where he said, I can do this on my own? And he clearly did, pushing out to Boston and trying to lead that situation. So I think it's going to be interesting to look back on many years from now and just say what happened, because I don't think it's going to pan out the way it probably should be for him. And you could just say injuries. That Boston run got hampered by his injuries too. If they had him in 2018, they'd probably get by Cleveland to the finals, and who knows what happens from there. So it's a great what if story with him that I think we could dive upon a little deeper than just going, Kyrie saying stupid things. And when we get back to it, Chance, I Love My Wife became Kyrie's flat earth, just the thing he could never get past. And like he said, he hasn't addressed that much over the years, but it all started with that stupid flat earth thing that didn't benefit him at all, was all risk, no reward. Like there was just nothing good that was going to come from that, especially in the social media age where I still don't know what he was trying to say. Like I haven't dug deep enough into it, and it's hard with him because he just puts things out there so vaguely. But I don't know. That's Kyrie Irving. Chance the Rapper. I think we found our comparisons for today. We've been talking forever. I'm gonna have to split this up into a couple of things. But Josue Pavone,
let's do it.
The Garden Report, heavy.com for Celtics coverage, and the Causeway Street podcast here on CLNS Media. You can find them in many different areas.
Cedric Maxwell too as well, man. Check us out, Cedric Maxwell podcast. Definitely.
Yeah, Josue is all over the network. Celtics Nets tonight when this is going to be heard, Friday. I guess we're not going to be in the building for a while this year. February, March, they're saying. So we'll be doing
Yeah,
this at home.
maybe we'll see.
And yeah, we'll just see where this pandemic goes. But Garden Report live after every Celtics game here on CLNS live streaming where you're watching this. This has been Dome Theory. Make sure you subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all those places. We'll be back next week talking about the music of the year with Mel Smith. We're wrapping this year with some music before we get into the basketball season. I'm Bobby Manning. Josue Pavone. We'll see you next week.
Appreciate you, Bobby.